Milwaukee will now head to Oakland for a weekend series starting tomorrow. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
Just a weird outing from Freddie Peralta. Still looking for that consistency in terms of being more efficient, getting through the hitters without going too deep in the counts. Had 9 3-ball counts in today's game.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Very kind words from Vinny Rottino there. Love Vinny, friend of show, friend of network, friend of the University of Wisconsin lacrosse, my fellow Eagle. Very kind way of saying, what did he say there? Weird outing for Freddie? Sure. That's one way we could put it. It's kind of looked like most of his other outings this year. Weird for his career, as in like he used to be better. He used to strike guys out. He used to throw a lot of pitches, but not this many pitches. And yeah, he'd throw a lot of pitches, but he'd strike guys out too. Today was the first game in forever. I think Rosiak tweeted it out. Freddie Peralta hasn't struck out a batter. The last time Freddie struck out as few batters as 2 in a game, May 22nd, 2022, in a 3-inning start versus Washington. So we did have a couple of strikeouts today. Freddie Peralta had 2. Last time he did that was in 2022 in a start that lasted 3 innings. I'd imagine he probably threw about 90 pitches through those 3 innings. Today, not as bad. He did make it through 5. Weird. Yeah. So again, one way to describe the start. It's not the way that it's not the way that I'm about to describe it. Vinny, much kinder, much more perspective-filled than me. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you didn't have to watch that Brewer game. I think I rather just would have done some clerical work here in the office, here in the studio. I think I would have preferred to, I don't know, fish files out of a filing cabinet. I don't do clerical work. Every once in a while, I fill out a time card. I fill out a form, but it's just like, I'm not in charge of clerical things or legal things. I wish I was. I would have done that today instead of watching this baseball game, instead of watching last night's baseball game too. See, last Thursday, the Brewers completed their split against the Dodgers. And I came on the air and I'm like, hey guys, I know everyone's jacked up. I know everyone's like really excited. We just won 2 in a row against the Dodgers and split the series after falling behind 0-2, 2 really bad games from, I think, Freddie in game 1, but Colin Ray in game 2. We're still celebrating, by the way, the fact that Colin Ray finished 6 innings last Tuesday against the Dodgers. Like we're still bringing it up on the broadcast. Well, this goes back to, remember when Colin Ray, he was getting beat up, but he went back out there and he gutted through those 6 innings. How valuable, how important was that? It's like, oh my God. Yeah, we get it. He went back out there. He ate some innings. It keeps coming up. But anyways, I came in last Thursday, back to my original point, and I wasn't really in the mood to be that cheerleadery for the Brewers because mostly watching them last Wednesday night and last Thursday afternoon annoyed me. Today is the same, except they lost these 2 games. I feel the exact same. So sometimes in sports or in business, we say process over result. The process for the Brewers, I thought mostly was bad last week. I thought it was especially bad the last 2 nights. The difference is the result. They won those 2 games against the Dodgers last week. They lost the 2 games against the Cardinals this week. That's really the only difference in how I think this team performed and how I feel about them. It's the only difference is the result. 608-321-1670, a little bit of a de facto Brewers postgame show. We'll take your calls and your texts. You can tweet me as well at Wisco Grant, and you can comment on the live stream, just pouring over some of the details from today's show. I wrote this down through 3 innings. Freddie Peralta through 3 innings has only allowed 2 hits, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. That's pretty good. 58 pitches. 58 pitches through 3. That was in the 3rd inning. I wrote that down. He finished the game 5 innings, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 2 strikeouts, 92 pitches, 49 of them for strikes. I'm telling you, this Cardinals team isn't good. They stink. Just throw strikes. Just throw strikes. It would have solved all the problems last night. Would have solved 80% of their problems today. I say 80%. Because their offense didn't do anything either. We can talk about that in a minute. Just throw strikes. For God's sake. I'm sitting here eating the almonds that I packed with my lunch, eating my peanut butter and jelly, and I watch Freddie Peralta on whatever, a 1-strike pitch, a 2-strike pitch. It's like, I don't even know what his body's doing. Just throwing the ball into the ground, throwing the ball into the backstop. What are you doing? Miles Michaelis, he's really not that good. He's been awful, actually. They were talking about it on the Brewers postgame show I was watching right before the show started. It's like, yeah, Miles Michaelis, his last 10 starts, he's actually been getting shelled. Well, you know what he did today? He threw strikes, and the pitches that weren't strikes were at least close to strikes. Freddie Peralta's strikes were barely strikes, and the balls were to the backstop, like Charlie Sheen in Major League. Appropriate as I have 4. I'm upping my bobblehead count every day this week. I have 4 Harry Doyle bobbleheads next to me. I'll add a 5th tomorrow to complete the week. I have 5. I own 5. Freddie, just throw strikes or pitches that are close to strikes. Jesus. And that would have been one thing if Freddie Peralta's start today and his performance hadn't inspired the rest of the Brewers pitching staff. Jared Koenig, 1 inning, 20 pitches, 11 strikes. Sure, 50-50. That's an efficient way to get through an inning. 50-50 ball strike mix for a pitcher like Jared Koenig. That'll do the trick. See, Nick Mears, who I thought got a little bit of bad luck. I don't really know why they called that pickoff play at first the way that they called it. Willie Adames probably should have caught that line drive. He took a Sal Frelick read to it, which is to say a bad one. Some soft hit contact. Soft. I'd be a little generous there. 95 miles per hour off the bat is not soft. I thought Mears had a little bit of a rough time, but again, 19 pitches, 11 strikes. Throw strikes. This team can't hit. This team can't score. Stop putting them on base. Bryce Wilson, I don't really blame him. Bryce Wilson isn't supposed to be in a game like this. Bryce Wilson is a mop-up guy at this point in the season, the way they built up the rotation, the way they built up the pen and gotten healthier. 26 pitches, 18 strikes. Nice. That's good. That's good. All these relievers watch Freddie Peralta struggle through 5 innings and thought, that's what I should do. That's a good approach. I'll do that. That was working really well. I thought of, what I thought of watching the Brewers staff pitch today? Like, have you ever gone to like a 4th grade 3-on-3 basketball game? Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. The hoops are lowered to 8 feet. None of the kids know what's going on. But even if you're not athletic, like me, sitting up in the stands, you're like, this is so easy. Just dribble, just a little layup off the backboard. Okay, yep, you're shooting it like that. That's okay. That's a way. Like, it hurts to watch. It hurts to watch. It hurt to watch Freddie Peralta pitch today. It hurt to watch the bullpen, too. I just don't expect as much out of Koenig and out of Mears. I expect a little more than they gave us today. Again, just throw strikes. Just throw strikes. And I probably shouldn't be beating up on the pitching staff as much as I'm beating up on the pitching staff today because they got shut out. The offense didn't score, and the offense gave me a headache, too. And I know it was against Miles Michaelis, who's been really bad. I'm not even too caught up on that because sometimes even a bad pitcher has a good day. I'd be able to get over the fact that the Brewers didn't score off Michaelis today if they actually put out a lineup that gave them their best chance to hit and compete. Garrett Mitchell last night looked like the worst hitter in all of baseball. Like, if you would have watched the Brewer game last night with no context of anything, you'd say, that guy, the handsome one, he's bad, right? There can't be another player. I mean, can he see? Does he need glasses? He's slumping. Okay. Like, he looked like the worst hitter in baseball last night. And Pat Murphy's grand strategic idea today was to move him from the 3-hole to the cleanup spot. The spot that normally comes up with runners on base, like it did in the first inning. And he promptly struck out. Just watch that ball right down the middle. Oh, that was a strike. I was supposed to swing at that. All right. Next at bat, I'll get him. And he didn't. He struck out in his next at bat, too. Garrett Mitchell, by the way, and people were tweeting these stats. By people, I mean me. Just pick a random number, a random split that MLB.com throws at me. Last 15 games, 46 at bats, 23 strikeouts. That's good. And again, strikeouts aren't the worst thing in the world. It's 2024. I'm not a caveman. I understand that strikeouts don't kill you if you drive the ball and produce runs. 46 at bats, 23 strikeouts, 1 home run, 2 RBIs. Okay. So you strike out a ton, and when you do make contact, you don't produce. Great. That's a guy who should be hitting 3 and 4. That's good. It's good stuff. Sal Frelick, a nice 0 for 3 today. Sal Frelick is like Garrett Mitchell, except fewer strikeouts. Still doesn't drive the ball, still doesn't produce, still doesn't hit the ball hard, but at least he doesn't strike out. Actually, sometimes it would be better if Sal Frelick strikes out because then he's grounding into double plays. He's just got a noodle bat. Like, anytime he gets a ball out of the infield, I'm a little amazed. He floated a single last night. I was driving home from work. He floated a single in, I don't know, the second or third inning probably. And Josh Mauer goes, that wasn't a hard hit ball at all. It's like, I'm not even watching the game. I could have told you that with 100% certainty, Josh. I could tell. I know. He doesn't hit the ball hard. That's not something that's in his repertoire at all. And he's hitting 7th. Some nights he's hitting 5th. Well, Joey Ortiz is stuck in the 9-hole. Pat, Garrett Mitchell and Sal Frelick are the 2 worst hitters in your lineup. Hit them 8th and 9th, or if you're really worried about righty-lefty, hit them 7th and 9th. Or hit them back-to-back. Because both of them right now are so bad, I don't know that righty-lefty makes a difference. Like Sal Frelick came up the other night. Ali Marmol, who's not a good manager, by the way, brought in a pitcher who was awful against lefties to get one guy, and then Sal Frelick followed it up. Sal Frelick promptly struck out against a guy who I think they mentioned on the broadcast has given up like a 340 average left-handed hitters. Catastrophe. Just awful. And we can continue to talk more about this. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe today you're like, well, they're still up 10 in the division. I know, but I had to watch him today. So that's my problem, is that game was on my television and I had to watch it with my eyeballs. That's the issue that I'm having. If you have different issues or you have a different spin, that's fine. I'll take your calls. I want to get into the Packers in the second hour of the show as well. 608-321-1670. We'll get to you next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And our people say he was out, but it doesn't matter. People in New York said he was somehow called stands. They didn't have enough evidence. So that happens. And so he would have been out of that inning. We wouldn't have talked about it. But after that, he didn't put the ball where he wanted to, didn't stay ahead in the count, walk somebody with the bases loaded. That's just unacceptable.
It's Pat Murphy after today's game describing Nick Mears' inning. I'm not really sure what that call was at first. The umpiring crew is a disaster this series. Home plate, replay. I thought it benefited the Brewers a lot last night. It hurt the Brewers last night as well. I thought the umpiring crew was a disaster, and that went both ways. I'm glad that Murphy then later referenced, it's like, well, yeah, then he walked a guy with the bases loaded, which is unacceptable. Thank you. Maybe let's get the pitchers in a room together tonight, and we can remind him. So the way that baseball works is if you throw strikes, you get guys out. If you throw balls, you walk them. And when you walk them, you put them on base, and then those runners can come around to score runs. And if the bases are loaded and you walk a guy, then a run comes home automatically. It seemed as though we lost that idea a little bit. And I don't even really blame Pat Murphy on that one. That's an execution thing. Pat Murphy has been pretty clear since spring training. Throw, strikes, we don't give out free passes. That's why Colin Ray, he treats him like his adopted son. He loves Colin Ray because he's efficient and he works from ahead in the count. That's why Montas was so good the other night. He worked from ahead in the count. Watching Freddie today just spike balls into the grass. It's like, dude, this team isn't good. The Cardinals suck. Just throw strikes. Please. I don't even need to enjoy the game. I'm just trying to watch and not want to put a hammer through my skull. 608-321-1670. We'll get to some of your thoughts. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hey, Clemhead. Fine. I'm doing good. Yeah. Colts at Bengals. That can't be any worse than the last two baseball games I've watched. Maybe I'll watch some preseason football tonight. Oh, yeah. Maybe for the Colts. Colts should be a team that should play some interesting players, I bet. I probably doubt that he'll play. I haven't been paying attention. But if he is, I'd like to watch. He's fun. Yeah, they're outfielders, man. They got a 20-year-old, they got a guy who can't hit the ball, and then they have another guy who can't hit the ball out of the infield. Like that's going to hurt you a lot. Vin Scully. You're good. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. He is a noodle bat, and there's a place in baseball, a small place in baseball for a guy with a bat like that. Like Luis Ariz is that guy. But Luis Ariz hits like 305, 310. Sal Frelick can't be the hitter that he is and hit. What is he hitting right now? He's hitting 260. That's not good enough. If he's going to be that type of hitter, he's got to never strike out, and he strikes out, and he's got to hit 40 points better in his batting average. Because this is just it's a non-player. He's not a threat in the lineup at all. Yeah, I also think a combination of outfield, Garrett Mitchell, Blake Perkins, and Churio would be a better outfield than Sal Frelick over any. Sal's good. The thing is, but they don't have bad defenders. We're not comparing Sal Frelick to Tommy Pham or Jesse Winker in one of the other corner outfielder spots. All of the guys on this roster, now that Blake Perkins is healthy, can defend really well. Yeah, this is where you feel the absence of Yelich, right? Because you want to keep Adames at 5, and Contreras at cleanup has been great because he's been hitting with a lot of power. But then the issue is you don't have anyone to put at 3. unless you want to put Hoskins there, but no, that doesn't, I don't like the shape of that either. Like, you're really feeling the absence of Yelich in a game like this. I don't know. I don't get that mad at Hoskins. I think he's for the player, for the trajectory that he's on coming off an injury last year. Like, I think he's mostly been fine this year. Maybe that's me not holding him accountable. I don't think he's had a great stretch here, but yeah, they did not fare well against the Athletics last year. I appreciate it, Clemhead. That was one of the teams that got him. Now, that was back at American Family Field. This team plays a lot better at home. I don't think we can discount that either. Like, they play off the energy at home, and they've talked openly about that. Freddie Peralta talked about that. Pat Murphy's talked about that openly, explicitly. It's like, yeah, the energy of the crowd really helps. Now, you got to be able to go on the road and, ideally win 2 games. I mean, if they win last night, I don't really care about today at all. And if they win today, I don't really care about last night. It's the combination of what happened last night and today. And look, I got people in my Twitter mentions right now at Wisco Grant, complaining about Pat Murphy. I think Pat Murphy is the same manager he's been all year. I've seen people saying like, well, Murphy, I don't know, some of his strategy. Murphy's never been a manager this season, at least, to make his bones on strategy, right? Like, if you were to do a Baseball Reference comparison, a side-by-side of Pat Murphy as a manager and Craig Counsell as a manager, they would look very different, right? They both have very different strengths and weaknesses. I think Murph's energy, his personality, kind of the CEO part of being a manager, just about as good as you can get. And Rhys Hoskins talked about that yesterday. I'll play that clip again for you here in a sec if you missed it yesterday. But, right, fostering a good energy and a certain enthusiasm over the course of a 162-game season, that's important. And I think Pat Murphy is measurably stronger in that department than Craig Counsell was. I think Murph's strategy department is a lot weaker, right? Using Peguero the way that he's used him, putting Garrett Mitchell in the 3-hole for some godforsaken reason, and putting him in the cleanup hole today. It's like, well, it didn't work last night, but what if we put him in a spot that's equally as important for run producing? I wonder if it will go different. And of course it didn't. Strikeout merchant with the power. And by the way, I've kind of been saying this with Garrett Mitchell all year. I'm not trying to beat up on the guy. I'm not trying to beat up on the Brewers. They're leading their division by 10 games. But a lot of Brewers fans super high on Garrett Mitchell. His offensive profile is not a strong one. He strikes out way too much, and he hits ground balls way too much. A player can strike out a ton, but they need to make up for it hitting with power. It's like, okay, so you don't always connect, but when you do, it's productive. It's doubles in the gap. It's home runs, right? You're producing runs. Garrett Mitchell does neither. So if you categorize all the outcomes, if you list all of the outcomes, there's very few outcomes in Garrett Mitchell's profile that are good. It's a lot of ground balls, a lot of strikeouts, right? Not a lot of actual pop, which I've kind of been saying long before he ever came, like all the way back to spring training. I've been saying that, right? And he's hitting 3rd and he's hitting 4th. Now, part of that is because Yelich is out, and I think Pat Murphy really likes the way the roster was built around Yelich. Love Turang at 1, love Churio at 2, love Contreras at 4, love Adames at 5. That combination 1 through 5 fits perfectly. The problem is you don't have anyone to hit 3rd now. Hoskins isn't going to do it. Ortiz, no. Frelick should be hitting 8th or 9th tops. You just don't have that guy. I might have hit Gary Sanchez there today. I just would have. That makes more sense to me. Makes a lot more sense to me. Anybody who can put the bat on the ball and produce and have a little pop, right? That's what I would have done today. It's still not perfect. This team is without a 3-hole hitter, but Murphy's strategy is not his strong suit. It's all the other stuff. And I think most of the time his strategy's fine, but some of the roster decisions, the Peguero usage, and then last night leaving Devin Williams out there, I would have been fine if he just would have used McGill from the start. McGill's coming back. He needs the work. Devin Williams had pitched the night before. He threw like 30 pitches the night before. Like McGill as an option just to get the 9th instead of Devin Williams would have been fine with me. Murphy makes his bones on being a CEO, right? Being a voice, being a curator of an attitude and a vibe and of a perspective and kind of a mission statement of a team. And Rhys Hoskins talked about this. I played you this audio yesterday. This is from Fair Territory with AJ Pierzynski and those guys. But this is what Rhys Hoskins had to say about Pat Murphy. And I think this hits the nail right on the head. This hits to what we're talking about.
He's got a way of keeping it light over a long season. where you're going to find yourselves in some valleys. Just keeping a smile on your face, I think, is first and foremost one of the things that he does best. But also, like you said, he's a baseball guy. He's been in this game for so long. He's seen and thought about everything that could or will happen on a field. And I think because of that, he has us prepared. We, as the Brewers, kind of have to play the game a little bit differently than some of these powerhouse teams in the league, running around the bases, causing chaos, bunting, trying to get a run here in the third, a run here in the fourth, and all of a sudden, look, we're up, 6-3 come time to eighth. But he just demands a lot of us. We're always kind of working before the games as well, just certain fundamentals, things like that. And I think because of those things that he's made important, we're executing at a pretty high level once the game starts, and you do that over and over and over again. You look up and you got a lot of wins in the win column.
So I love that. I love that description. I think it's an apt description of Murphy's strengths. His weaknesses are strategic. And again, if you hit Garrett Mitchell third today or fourth today, and you have a bad day against Michaelis, fine. But having this day after the day you had last night, that's what gets me. Because they behaved as stupidly. Like, the decision-making from Murphy late in that game last night was miserable. And the bad umpiring throughout hurt both teams. It was annoying for both teams. It was just a pain in the ass series. Not that dissimilar to the Dodgers series last week. None of you wanted to hear it because they won the last two games. But really similar process. Last Wednesday, Thursday to this week, Wednesday, Thursday. The result different, the process very similar, and I feel very similar, despite 2 wins, 2 losses. I know, very different. 608-321-1670. More of your thoughts. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Brenda and Madison. Now, you're a voice I needed to hear today, Brenda. Thank you for calling. Okay. No, because continue.
Or the good stuff happens here in September, in October.
So I'm just not a believer that they're going to start slumping in September. When people say, like, oh, they peaked too early, it's like, yeah, okay, but what do you want them to do? Like I said this yesterday, do you want the team to not win too much, right, when they're playing well? Like the 6-game winning streak they just came off of. Like, I'm not going to argue whether they peaked too early. I don't know that I don't know that this is the start of something. I'm looking at these two games very much in a vacuum, and both of them really annoyed me. I think that's my take today.
Yeah, they were kind of both very annoying. Just like you said, the officiating was, oh my God, it did not pass the smell test for either team, luckily. But so it sucked all around.
Yeah.
And then just like the decision making last night in the ninth, not to pull Devin Williams and some other stuff, and then just today it was not good.
Not good. I don't know that it's a harbinger of things to come, Brenda. I appreciate you and your positive, if nothing else, a positive delivery, not necessarily positive attitude, but positive delivery. And I appreciate it. I'm not saying that this isn't the start of anything. This isn't the start of some slump or September slide or peaking too early. Nothing like that. It's two really annoying games. And we're doing a show today to talk about the game that took place today and the game that took place last night. So I'm not predicting some September slump or anything like that. It's just I've had to watch this the last 2 nights, and now I need to talk about it on the show. So I think I got frustrated at the beginning, but I haven't completely and totally blown my gasket. I don't know. If they'd won last night, today wouldn't bother me. And if they lost last night, won today, last night wouldn't bother me. It's both of these days back-to-back in conjunction that really bothers me. Now, Bill earlier today made the point. It's like, well, if you lose out on one of the buys, if you lose on the first or second seed because of one of these games, we're going to look back at it. That's masterful radio work. That's a really good way to assign meaning to a game that, to many folks probably didn't have a ton of meaning. I don't know that I'm willing to go that far to say, well, if the season comes down to one game, because you could do that with any game. 608-321-1670. One more call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, hi, second time caller, TJ and Madison. So,
Oh, yeah.
quick question for you.
Uh-huh.
Well, one comment then a question.
Okay.
Do you feel like Murph is sort of like the PJ Fleck of the Gopher football team? Like, he's notorious for not knowing football, but it's like the hype man and kind of gets the team, like ready to go and ready to play. So that's the comment.
Okay.
The question is, where does Ricky Weeks come into play here? Brought him in, obviously super experienced. When does he start to pull Murph aside and say, hey, have we thought about this? Could we try this? What is the role of the bench coach? Obviously, Murph was it for like 8 years or something. So where does Weeks come into play and try to help Murph out on some of this?
So people have asked about Ricky Weeks this season, and EJ, I appreciate it. People have asked about Ricky Weeks. I don't know what to say about Ricky Weeks. I don't know what role he plays. I know people inside the Brewers organization are really high on him, like him, which is why they gave him this role. I don't know what to tell you. I have nothing to add about the role or the value that he brings or when he's supposed to step in and make a call. Murphy needed to go get Williams last night. I would have been fine if he just would have pitched McGill instead, because McGill needed the work. He's coming back. Devin Williams had pitched the night before. He threw like 30 pitches, worked really hard. He ran out of gas last night. So if he just throws McGill instead, I think they probably win that game. If they bring McGill in a little bit earlier, I think the odds are still decent that they win that game. So I don't know what role Ricky Weeks plays in that. The PJ Fleck comparison is funny. I know what you mean, and I get the question. I just think vibes matter a lot more in a 162-game baseball season, when I think half the battle for a manager is to just keep the clubhouse, keep the energy, to maintain through bad stretches and bad series. Football, not so much. Like, you got to be a good football coach. It's really hard, and that's why so few coaches, it's hard to be the CEO head coach. It's hard to be a coach that isn't tied to brilliant defensive scheme or really good offensive scheme. It's hard to be a head coach that's just like the CEO. Tomlin's done it for a while, but now I also think Tomlin is somewhat limited in how he can help the Steelers find their next quarterback and install their next offense. Vrabel was doing it for a bit, but then he ends up losing his job. Pete Carroll did it for a bit when you have a franchise quarterback who's already there or was there for a while with Russell Wilson. It's easier. It's hard to be a CEO coach in football. Baseball, that carries a little bit more weight. It has a little bit more value. You can't suck at the strategy, just like a strategic manager can't suck with the CEO stuff. Which, by the way, I think that's why Craig Counsell and Pat Murphy were such a good fit for a long time. They kind of helped each other out, strengths and weaknesses. 608-321-1670. We'll continue to take your calls, your texts. I want to get into the Packers in hour number 2 as well. We'll wrap up hour 1. Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes.
It's kind of a weird day for Freddie. Only 2 strikeouts, which, strikeouts are what they are, but didn't throw a slider much either. What did you see from him today?
I mean, he threw a good breaking ball. He just missed with it a lot. I thought he was good. 5 innings shutout, a team that's got nothing to lose, you know what I mean? You get 5 innings of shutout, only 2 hits, I think. And I mean, you can see what you want. The pitch count got up there, and I'm not interested in him keep going 100 plus when, he's got a lot of big starts left.
It's Pat Murphy after the game, just about an hour ago, talking about Freddie. The results are one thing. Like, Freddie didn't give up any runs. It's just tough to watch him pitch like this. Just throws so many bad pitches. Man, stop spiking balls in the grass. Stop throwing balls forehead high. Stop. Like, baseball's a hard game. Something that I think Pat Murphy's done a really good job of this year is just making baseball as simple as possible. So, hold on a sec. We are the Brewers. We don't have the roster of the Dodgers or the Phillies or some of the other higher spending, bigger market clubs in the league, okay? We don't have the margin for error. We don't have the room to mess around and to beat ourselves. We can't walk a bunch of guys. Just throw strikes. Please, for the love of God, just throw strikes. That's why him and Colin Ray are a perfect match. It's because Colin Ray's always working from ahead, never putting guys on, never administering free passes. And just to watch Freddie Peralta go out there and to work as hard as he has to work to just get hitters in a bad offense out. The Cardinals are not a good offense. They're a bad offense. They can't score. And to watch him waste that many pitches. Like, yeah, he went 5 shutout innings. In 100 pitches, man. It's just frustrating. Because Freddie can be better. I know he can be better. He's not going to be the ace every start, but every once in a while, I'd like for him to be an ace for a start. Just been a while. Let's take a 2-minute break. We'll get an update from Zach Heilprin. Let's talk Packers next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
She lets me use the car.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Brewers lost their first series in about 3 weeks earlier today after getting shut out 3-0 by the Cardinals. Milwaukee had little luck against Miles Mikolas, allowed just 2 hits over 6 innings while striking out 3 and walking 1. Brewers manager Pat Murphy spent time with Mikolas earlier in his career, knows even if he hasn't had a great season, that days like today are possible.
Got a big contract. He's been a great pitcher, and he's very capable of that. He dominated us today. Great two-seamer, worked both sides of the plate, kept attacking. Movement on the baseball was very good.
Freddie Peralta was pretty good too, not allowing a run over 5 innings of work. But in the 7th inning, Nick Mears allowed 3 runs, including walking a batter with the bases loaded, as Brewers lost 2 of 3 in the series. Still, their lead in the NL Central stands at 10 games on St. Louis. They'll now head to Oakland to open up a series against the Athletics starting tomorrow night.
Rural Mutual Insurance. keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Packers held a joint practice with the Ravens earlier today in Green Bay in what was the last open practice this summer. It was a good day for the team and a big improvement over their performance in last week's practice out in Denver. Coach Matt LaFleur said he still isn't sure if Jordan Love will play against the Ravens in Saturday's preseason finale. Kick on Saturday is at noon. The team must be down to 53 players by next Tuesday. And the Badgers are getting closer to game week. They open the season next Friday night against Western Michigan. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Prin.
Just a weird outing from Freddie Peralta, still looking for that consistency in terms of being more efficient, getting through the hitters without going too deep into counts. Had 9 3-ball counts in today's game.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I know if Zach were here, he'd be giving me guff. I'm just listening to his update. Freddie Peralta was good, 5 scoreless innings. And I'm like, yeah, but God, I was miserable watching every single one of them. I wish we had a chance to talk to Zach this week. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week as we get ready for week 1 of the Badgers season. We had Jesse Temple last night. He was excellent. I recommend you go listen to that in the podcast from last night's show. If you didn't get a chance to listen live, it's an hour number 2. I think 5:15 or 5:30, we heard from Jesse last night. Really good interview, some good stuff going into Western Michigan, including expectations for maybe what that game should look like with a spread now over 3 touchdowns. I believe the spread's about 24, 25 and a half. And getting Jesse's opinion on that, it's like, look, I know fans like me, we're not happy unless the Badgers blow them out. How do you view it? He's like, well, if it looks like it did against Buffalo last year, it's going to feel awfully similar. And I don't think that's going to feel good. I said, bingo. It's got to feel more commanding than those early season non-conference games did last year. It's the Wisco Sports Show. I'd love to take your calls, your texts, 608-321-1670. I want to get into the Packers, but if anyone's joining the show, they've been running a little bit behind, you just now have a chance to get in and you want to give your thoughts on the Brewers, what happened last night, what happened today. That's fine too. That's fine. We can do both. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Hector in Onalaska.
What's up, Hector? What's going on?
Actually, Hector on I-90.
Oh!
I'm on my way back from Green Bay. We were at the training camp, of course. Can't miss the Ravens meet in town.
Yeah, that's right. So what did you think? You did you take the whole family? That must have been nice.
No, not the whole family this year. Just me and a couple of buddies from work met up. One came from Milwaukee, me and another came from lacrosse.
So it was just a guy's trip. Never mind. Screw the kids. You guys must have had a blast today.
Oh, it was a blast. Yep. We actually met up last night, sat in the hot tub and watched the Brewers blow a lead. Unfortunate. But the camp today was good. It was very entertaining.
Let's start. I want you to give me your thoughts on camp, but I want to paint the picture first. My favorite part of anything that I saw from practice today was John Harbaugh, and I'm going to read you this tweet from Rob Domofsky, and I want you to tell us more about this, okay, Hector? Rob Domofsky tweeted as John Harbaugh speaking with the media, Ravens coach John Harbaugh praised the Packers' facilities, made special mention of former team president Bob Harlan and his impact on everything around here. And then he went on to say, it was 2 teams that had the right mindset going in, and we got good work. It sounds like from both coaches, everyone came into this with the right idea. The practices were productive, competitive. It was good stuff. That's what these practices. Did you get that read from it watching it today?
I did, yep. And I think that was Harbaugh's polite way of saying that we have some work to do on offense because the defense was definitely showing out against all 3 teams that the Ravens put out there. I was finding myself cheering more for the young receivers that I love. You know, Malik Heath and Dontavian Wicks were doing good. I was very thoroughly surprised by one Tucker Kraft.
I
think
saw a lot of Tucker
he's
Kraft
been
hype on
amazing.
Twitter today.
I think he's gonna be good. Jordan Love, when he had a little pressure, he seemed to look for him more than his running back, more than Wick or even Reed across the middle. So it was nice to see.
Okay.
I think watching, we and the two guys we're discussing it, and overall, he might be more well-rounded and ready than Musgraves for sure. I think Musgraves has the size, but yeah. Romeo Dobbs dropped a lot of passes.
That's what I saw. I saw he dropped a couple balls. I saw Dubose make a nice snag. Heath with a good deep ball. Clifford made a couple throws. One last thing, Hector. It sounded like the Packers' defensive line, their edge rushers, their pass rushers, they were in the backfield. They were getting in Lamar's face all day. Is that because the Ravens' O-line is banged up? They're still figuring that out. Did the Packers' D-line look really good? Tell me about that.
I actually was confident with the O-line coming into it. So I think it has more so to do with how the Packers were playing them. It was a lot of it was a lot of coverage. So like the lineman went in when he should have went out. I think the Packers kind of played us a little bit more than we thought they were. We also are moving people around on the offensive line, but I thought it was a little more well-rounded than it was. But yeah, they gave me a lot to think about, honestly. And I've been hearing stuff about, the Bengals winning the division, and I was a little bit hurt. But watching today, I think that's a little more true than I want to believe. So.
Well, and it's not the worst thing in the world. And Hector, I appreciate you calling and giving us those details, and I'm glad you had fun at Packers practice. It would have been cool to take the kids, but you probably had more fun just with your guy friends there to watch some football. That dude's rock. Hell yeah, Hector. Thank you for the call. That makes me a little bit more excited as a Packers fan because I saw, and I have it written down in my lineup, something that I was going to talk about tonight. I saw so many comments about TJ Slayton, Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt. It seemed like every different defensive lineman and edge rusher for the Packers got a mention today. It seemed like they were really disruptive and they were getting after Lamar Jackson, which is great. I also saw some commentary then from Ravens people. It was like, well, it's not totally shocking. It's not totally out of the ordinary for this training camp because they've been shuffling around the O-line, and that's been a little bit of a concern. But Hector, our resident Ravens fan, which I completely forgot until he mentioned that. It's like, oh yeah, the perfect caller to talk to today is Hector, especially with him being at practice. He says, no, I wasn't really that worried about the O-line. He was just more impressed with the Packers up front defensively, which makes me feel good. I have a couple of other takeaways from Packers practice today that I want to talk about. That was one of them, though, and I'm glad Hector brought it up. I guess I kind of brought it up as well, but I'm glad he spoke to it. The Packers defensive line sounded like it had a really good day against the Ravens up front and really made their life difficult. And I think John Harbaugh talking about that. It was a good day of practice, it sounded like, from the coaches. Everyone was focused. There weren't any fights. It sounded really productive, which, I'm not in charge of them. I'm not the coach. So if there's a little scrap, whatever, I don't think it's the end of the world, but it sounded like it was a really productive and cool experience for some of the Ravens who got to ride the bikes and, do the Green Bay things today. 608-321-1670. Let's keep it moving. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. You're not coming back from Green Bay, are you?
No, I'm not coming back from Green Bay.
All right.
No, coming back from the secret lair.
Gotcha. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That girl who called earlier, what's her name?
Brenda.
Brenda. Brenda's kind of right about the Brewers, and you know me. I'm not into the X's and O's like you are, but the randomness of baseball, you guys want to come in hot at the end. You really do, right? Because it just seems like when the playoffs start and the World Series happens, they're all about the same level of team in there, and the randomness of baseball takes over. There's a lot of randomness in this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of variables. So I think the Brewers are more set to be successful this year because I think they got some fight in them.
Look,
rather than all of the
you want the adversity, Eric, and you want that in football too, right? Like, look at the Packers in 2010; they had to fight and claw, and it's like It's often not the team with the yellow brick road going all the way to the Super Bowl or to the World Series.
No.
Last
Never
night,
happens.
I think
Never happens.
it almost never happens. I think there was some flukiness last night. It just kind of felt like a game the Cardinals were supposed to win. Like the Brewers, they'd won 6 in a row, and like Lucan Barker or whatever his name is, Lucan Baker, hits the home run in his first plate appearance of the year. It just kind of felt like a game that the Cardinals were supposed to win. And I'd be able to get over that if I felt like Murphy had used the best possible process and still lost, kind of made a mess of it in the 9th and then again in the 10th. And then today, like, okay, so Miles Michaelis shuts you down, but also you had Garrett Mitchell batting cleanup. And, Grant, who did you want? I don't know, Gary Sanchez, really anybody else? Because Garrett Mitchell's a strikeout machine right now. It was a strikeout convention the last 2 games, Eric, and Garrett Mitchell was the keynote speaker.
I think clearly what we have here, Grant, is a situation where everybody's trying to tell you how to fan, and you can fan any way you want.
You know, Eric, sometimes it feels like that on the show, doesn't it? Do I ever tell all of you how to, Eric, do I tell you how to fan? I don't tell people how to fan.
You do not tell me how to fan. That's one of the rules. You do not tell people how to fan, and Grant Bills is included in that.
That is true. Some people do occasionally tell me how to fan. Now, Clemhead Mike does it kindly. He does it with a soft touch, so he can get away with it. But
there's a soft touch. You know, who was our last caller? Hector?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard from Hector in a while.
You're a countryman in Alaska, I believe.
Right. Don't fret, Hector, about a preseason game, and you might lose the division. Don't fret it.
Yeah,
I think the Ravens got a great chance of winning that division.
The Ravens might be kind of sick. Derrick Henry on the Ravens. We keep forgetting. That's going to be entertaining. I can't wait to turn on a Ravens game and see what that looks like.
Yeah, they're a bloody nose kind of team. They're going to give you a bloody nose, and you better like bloody noses when you play them. So that's all I got today, Grant. You have a great day.
Excellent. You have an even better day, Eric. I appreciate that, and thank you for standing up for my right to fan the way that I want to fan. And you know what? The way that I want to fan a lot of the time with the Brewers is to be as negative as possible. And sometimes I just need you guys to let me do that. And I thought Brenda's call was above board. Clemhead Mike sometimes tells me to calm down. It's just sports, which is, Clemhead Mike, he can get away with that. He does it again with a light touch, with a soft touch. So you can get away with that. But yeah, Hector, we could talk about the AFC North. Let's do predictions either next week or the week after. We can do prediction day. We can pick all the divisions. We can pick the awards, MVP, Coach of the Year, all that kind of thing. And it's just not for this week. We're a little bit too far away still. I want to see the final preseason games, talk about the final preseason games. And then when we're staring down the barrel of week 1, then we can get into some predictions. So put a pin in that, Hector. We'll circle back to that. We'll talk about it. Practice today was eventful. I told you about the defensive line a little bit, and Hector commented on that. The defensive line was making plays, and I saw so much commentary from Packers reporters about that. Everybody's name basically got mentioned. I saw Slayton, Gary, Van Ness, Devontae Wyatt. It seems like just about every player along that defensive front got a mention at some point today, which excites me. Actually, I don't know that I saw a mention for Carl Brooks or Jonathan Ford, but most of the names got mentioned. It just seemed like a really productive day, a disruptive day for that defensive front. Now, I want to go back to something that was said on Monday's show. And it's a conversation that I had with Pete Doherty, the Green Bay Press Gazette, which I actually had on Bill's show because Bill had to dip out for about 20 minutes. So I chatted with Pete. And one thing that I asked him was about the defensive line. And it's about 1 minute, 30 seconds. I'll play you the full exchange, the question and answer. This is Pete Doherty from earlier in the week talking about the defensive line that apparently, reportedly, had an awesome day today. I think I've done this every preseason and every camp. We always talk ourselves into, at least fans do. And I want to get your take, which is my point. But fans, we always say, man, defensive line, look at all these guys, Slayton and Brooks and Woolen. It's like, man, all of these guys are great. Look at how much depth they have. And then all too often we get to week 1. It's like, actually, they're mostly average to below average guys, right? And of course, I didn't mention Gary and Van Ness and Clark, but we always talk ourselves into guys, 3, 4, 5 along the defensive line. Is it different this year? I feel like it might be different. I really like this defensive line group and this edge rushing group, the outside linebacker group. What have you seen from the front and how they've looked in this Jeff Hafley defense? Let's wrap up with that. I want your thoughts on that group.
Yeah, it does look better than the norm, better than usual.
Cool.
I remember there was a play where Wooden got blown out of the hole, but it was a double team, and so they ran right through it. But overall, I think both him and Brooks have been good rotational players. The D line is where you really like to rotate guys through to keep everybody fresh. I mean, I remember those really good Seattle defenses. They had 8 guys, and they just rotated those guys through, and their pass rush was so strong from start to finish in games, in part because of that. And I think all those guys are going to play a lot. In fact, there's a place in the NFL for Jonathan Ford. I mean, he is a big guy.
Yeah.
And he can play the run. Now, those guys don't make tackles, but they really plug things up. And if you go through the game tape, and I went through with Eric Bronchek just before we talked, as a matter of fact, this guy played a pretty decent game, and I don't think he's going to make the 53. If he doesn't, there's at least a small chance somebody would pick him up who's really light on D linemen. If he makes it through, he'll be on the practice squad. Maybe he'll even make the Packers 53, but there's a place for him to play and to get some, early down snaps and being, a rotational part of a defensive line. So they go 6 deep this year. And I think it is a long way back to the original point. It is a better D line than they've had for the last, 10 or 15 years. I think it's a little better quality depth than they've had.
So that's what I wanted to hear from Pete. Am I talking myself into the same thing that I try to talk myself into every year? It's like, well, Slayton and Brooks and Wyatt, they'll take the step. They'll take the leap. They'll figure it out this season. A couple of years ago, no. Last year, no. I took the cheese. This year, this is for real. And Pete's never one to blow smoke up your butt, just like Rob Reichel isn't, just like Mike Clemens isn't, right? It's a group of pretty realistic, reasonable Packers voices that we are lucky enough to get on our network from time to time. I just really want to buy into, I really want to believe that this unit of Brooks, Slayton, Ford, as Pete talked about, Wyatt, Kenny Clark, who, right? Like, but we know what he is. I'm not trying to talk myself into anything with Kenny Clark. And then the edge rushers as well, right? A little bit of a different idea. Those are edge rushers versus interior defensive linemen, but between Van Ness, Gary, Preston Smith, and Igbari, that's a really nice group of 4. They can rotate bodies along that line. I think in a way they haven't been able to the last couple of years. And to see it pop up, even in just a joint practice against the Ravens, right? 2 days after hearing Pete kind of sing their praises in a way that only Pete can, right? Still very seriously, still very matter-of-factly, but still, I am excited about this defensive front, and I'm starting to think that this isn't just any other defensive front. This unit could be really, really good. And I'm interested to see how Jeff Hafley deploys them as well, and what might be different from Joe Barry's scheme. Not necessarily better or worse, but just different, and how that impacts all these different guys. Something else that I wrote down, and this didn't take place at Packers practice today. I think this has just become a reasonably large Packer story in the last couple of days. A.J. Dillon is missing time, and he's got a stinger. It's a repeat injury. And Matt LaFleur said the other day when asked about it, are you concerned? He says, well, yeah, anytime you have repeat injuries, I'm concerned. He's had this injury before. And now that it's popped back up, that's a red flag to me. That freaks me out. And I think that's very reasonable. I don't think that's sensationalist at all. I think if you have a player that suffered an injury last year, now is suffering it again, that's more concerning than I just rolled my ankle a little bit. I'll be back in 2 or 3 days, right? A.J. Dillon's injury status wouldn't be the end of the world if Marshawn Lloyd has been practicing and looking good. But he had a hip injury and he has a hamstring injury. And in between those injuries, when he's been practicing, scrimmaging, he's looked bad. He's been fumbling. He's been dropping passes. He doesn't look ready. So now A.J. Dillon's status becomes really important because we're looking at potentially going into this year with Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, and that's it. Now, I like Josh Jacobs as a number 1 back if he has to be the bell cow and be the only guy, really. I prefer Josh Jacobs to Aaron Jones because Aaron Jones, occasionally has to miss some time, and that's not even his fault. He's just a little older. Josh Jacobs, a big part of the reason why I think they were okay with letting Jones go to bring in Josh Jacobs. It's like, well, why did you just keep Aaron Jones? Well, because Josh Jacobs is 4 years younger. There's a lot of tread on that tire relative to Aaron Jones. So if we go into this year, Marshawn Lloyd is injured and or not ready. Aaron Jones is injured again. If it's Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, I feel a lot better about that than I'd feel about Aaron Jones and Emmanuel Wilson, which is what we had last year. And when Jones was healthy, it was great. But when he had to miss time, because he's a little bit older and I think just a little bit more fragile, probably, we hope, than Josh Jacobs. It kind of fell apart. Matt LaFleur just needs 1 or 2 healthy, competent running backs behind Josh Jacobs. That's it. And A.J. Dillon would count as that. Emmanuel Wilson might. I think Emmanuel Wilson was a little bit of a notch beneath where he needed to be last year to actually contribute at the NFL level and not just in the preseason or a practice. Maybe he takes a jump this year. He takes a step, and he's that guy behind Josh Jacobs. Maybe they're fine. But last year, they really didn't have anyone behind Jones. And when Jones was injured, they just couldn't run the ball. Jones comes back, and you see how good of a running game Matt LaFleur can scheme up. But you need the back. Josh Jacobs is that back, but who else? Who's behind him? A 2024 version of Brandon Jackson would suffice. They don't need a Pro Bowler. They just need someone to do the basic, bare minimum, competent running back things. That's it. That's all they need. And I'm worried if they're going to be able to get it from this group of Wilson, Dillon, and Lloyd. I feel like that's a fair concern. I don't feel like I'm banging around on A.J. Dillon right now. I don't feel like I'm picking on him, although his career from the moment he's drafted to now is a fascinating one, and maybe we can talk about that coming up next. I also have a couple other Packers storylines that I want to get into. Let's take a 3-minute break. 608-321-1670. We'll get to your thoughts next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think anytime you have a, repeated injury, absolutely there's a concern. But I think we're being cautious with him and just making sure we gather all the information before we let him go back out there.
Matt LaFleur earlier this week talking about A.J. Dillon's injury. It's a stinger. It's the same injury that he had last year. A.J. Dillon does not need to be a superstar running back. He just needs to be available and to be able to do some bare minimum running back things. Right? Spell Josh Jacobs, be able to pick up 3 or 4 yards when 3 or 4 yards are there to be picked up. Catch the ball as a safety valve, throw some blocks and pass protection. That's it. That's all. He's injured with a stinger. He can't do any of those things. Now, this injury would not be a big deal, and I said this before the break, if Marshawn Lloyd basically hadn't been MIA this entire camp with a hip injury, then with a hamstring injury. And when he was out there, he didn't look all that great. So the anti-Marshawn Lloyd narratives, looking at you, Vagabond John, right? Like they got a lot of steam right now. It's not a good time for A.J. Dillon to be injured and missing time because right now he would be running back 2. Now, Emmanuel Wilson's got a crack at it, and I don't want to dismiss the idea that Emmanuel Wilson could ascend to running back 2. Like maybe he got a lot better this offseason. He just looked a tick beneath where the Packers need him to be last year. Same with Patrick Taylor. Say that whole group of running backs, A.J. Dillon too, they all were a tick below where they needed to be to step in and to be at least semi-productive in the absence of Aaron Jones, right? Josh Jacobs is the number 1 guy, but he can't take every single carry. And if he needs to miss a game or two due to injury or, God forbid, longer, you can't just stop running the football. And last year when Aaron Jones got hurt, they basically had to stop running the football because nobody behind him on the depth chart was good enough. Maybe Emmanuel Wilson ascends to that level of good. Maybe. Could happen. I just haven't seen it. I would need to see it to feel better about it. And I don't really feel all that great about it right now. 608-321-1670 if you'd like to join me to talk Packers and to talk about some of the big storylines coming out of camp today. I mentioned the defensive line, a unit that got a ton of publicity on Packers Twitter today. Big picture, and I talked about this with Hector closer to back to 5 o'clock. John Harbaugh had some comments, and this is the reporting or the tweeting at the very least of Rob Domofsky, said after the game, Ravens coach John Harbaugh praised the Packers facilities and made special mention of former team president Bob Harlan and his impact on everything around here. He said, quote, "It was 2 teams that had the right mindset going in, and we got good work." You know, I kind of poke fun at football coaches sometimes because they get so bent out of shape about this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, things that just shouldn't bother them. I always go back to 2019 when Matt LaFleur was hired and he was getting questioned about Kamal Martin's knee. He injured it in training camp. And the Packers beat was like, so is it his right or is it his left? Because he injured one of his knees in college. I don't remember which one. But the B basically wanted to know, is this the same knee that he injured in college? And Matt LaFleur was like, you guys like to ask the tough questions, don't you? It's like, wait, why? That's such a normal question. Like, I think football coaches, they have this idea of, you know, what they need to say and do with the media, right? Football coaches can get bent out of shape about some things. And I think joint practices is one of them. It's like, I swear if there are any fights, you're going to prevent us from getting in there and accomplishing our task. It's like, okay, but if there's a 3 or 4 second scuffle after a play that's quickly broken up, is it that big of a deal? Of course not. No, it's not. Football coach, it's so bent out of shape. Oh, you won't be fighting. You won't be pushing each other around in my practice. So I think sometimes the idea of fights at training camp is like, well, what are you going to do if there are fights? And Gerard Mayo's like, well, if you're a starter, you're gonna have to play the whole preseason game, and if you're not a starter, you're not going to play at all. It's football coaches being football coaches. But it is nice to hear that it seems like both of these teams came in today very serious, locked in on getting a good practice in. The bike ride looked really cool. Lamar Jackson riding a bike, and you know, it looked like a cool experience. Which, by the way, like, I hope when teams come to Green Bay, they get to experience that kind of thing and they appreciate that thing. There was this weird movement from some Packers fans on the internet and callers to some sports shows that I've heard this week, where it's like the Ravens shouldn't be riding bikes. That should just be for Packers players. Okay, that's weird. Really weird slant. Really, really, really weird slant. You don't want Lamar Jackson ride a bike to practice? That's cool. 2-time NFL MVP, a little bit of an icon. That's cool. Like gatekeeping bike riding to the likes of Royce Newman. Stop. 608-321-1670. One more Packers thing that I wanted to mention from practice today. I am allowing myself to be cautiously optimistic on Eric Stokes. It seems like he's got some of that speed back, some of that gap closing ability back. It seems like he's dialed in. It seems like he's healthy. Knock on wood, that continues, and he just hasn't been healthy the last 2 years. So it seems like he's maybe going to be the player that, let's be honest, the Packers kind of need him to be this year. Brian Gutekunst, the way that he drafted and approached free agency this year, basically told us, I trust my corners. I like my cornerback room a lot, right? And I like that the general manager has confidence in his own players. I don't know that I would have had the stomach to bet on Eric Stokes' health, which is basically what Brian Gutekunst did, passing up the opportunity to draft Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw and Cooper DeJean and so on and so forth. I'm not even saying that I was obsessed with those prospects, if those were options, and you could have added a young, toolsy, high upside player in the first or second round to go and kind of be an addition, at the very least, a rotational piece, a depth piece to that corner position. And they didn't do it. Eric Stokes is going to need to be pretty good this year, I think, for the Packers to really get where they want to go. And at least so far through the preseason and through training camp, it seems like Eric Stokes is healthy and performing. And maybe it's as simple as being healthy for him, right? Maybe that's the only thing that the Packers needed from him, is to just be 100% physically so he could be the player that really he's been the whole time. Body just hasn't let him, right? So I am now allowing myself to be cautiously optimistic on Eric Stokes. Just hope he stays healthy. I hope. Jerry tweets in, says 375 attempts by running backs last year. Josh Jacobs should get 230 to 250. Give Dillon and Wilson about 60 to 70 each. At worst, one of them gets 120 carries. Yeah. Matt LaFleur always balances his carries. And we can go back and look at the last couple of years, but he's never one to use a bell cow back, even I think at times to his detriment. Like he didn't use Derrick Henry that way. Looking back, probably should have. Probably would have been a good idea, but that's just not how he's wired. Thank you, Jerry, for the tweet at Wisco Grant. Get to some of your texts coming up next. 608-321-1670. We'll keep talking Packers. I have some Badger thoughts as well, some college football thoughts, building on some things that we talked about yesterday. More of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The Wisco Sports Show. Welcome back. A little breaking news. It's not breaking right this moment. It kind of broke earlier this afternoon, and then it broke officially within the last 20 minutes. The Mariners are letting go Scott Service. They're 1-8 on their last road trip. Mariners have been really disappointing. So I don't blame the Mariners for this. Probably a smart thing for them to do, a team with high expectations, and they're aggressive at the deadline, all that stuff. But this is an affront to Coon Valley in the surrounding areas. They will not take this affront lying down. Robin Stoddard tweeted in, said just wait until he becomes the best head coach in high school and Legion ball for his hometown. That'd be badass. Come back and coach high school baseball at Westby or, wherever in the area. It would be pretty great. God, my heart is with the Coon Valley. I love Coon Valley so much. I think if I pound for pound, if I could live anywhere and teleport, that's my dream. Is that one day we're going to be able to live wherever we want, location aside, right? Anywhere in the country, anywhere in the state. And in the morning, I just get into my little teleporter and it takes me to work. I could live in Florida and teleport to work in California, just like that. Like, that's my dream. And if I could do that, I'd be sick to live in Coon Valley. I don't know if to live in Coon Valley. My heart is with Scott Service. He's probably not surprised. The manager's probably the least surprised when this kind of stuff happens. Bart texts in 608-321-1670. I'm behind on the text. Bart says 3 guys in a hot tub. Hector in Onalaska needs to keep some things to himself. Oh my God. You're telling me you and 2 other boys having some beers sitting in a hot tub watching a Brewer game? I'd brag about that too. I think it's a bad take. It's a bad take for you, Bart, to quote Craig Counsell. Birthday boy yesterday, 54 years young, I believe. Jay Krebs says, Pat Murphy forgot more about baseball than Ricky knows. He was not a smart baseball player. He ran the bases awfully and had mental errors at second. I really don't understand him as a coach, to be honest. Sometimes those types of players make the best coaches, though. I don't know. Typically not low IQ players, but sometimes ability and performance don't always match coaching ability. Coyote Mike says, Grant, I did a double take when they announced Mitchell as the cleanup hitter today. Most of the time, he looked like a deer in the headlights. Then he gets caught looking again in the first inning with 2 runners in scoring position. He's 4 for 38 or something like that. I used to be in Mitchell's corner, but ... Yeah, Garrett Mitchell in his last 15 games. It's just the splits, by the way. I'm just giving you the splits that MLB.com gives you. I could look up like since a certain... this is good enough. 46 plate appearances in his last 15 games. He has 7 hits in those 46 at-bats and 23 strikeouts. 152 batting average, if you care about batting average, and I do. I believe it's the one true stat. I think that's how we should look at batting average. Boathouse Tom says, cannot hear Clemhead. Okay, yeah, I fixed that. Thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry I didn't see that a little bit earlier. A couple Brewers thoughts. Rick from Spencer says, hey, Grant, if you can get Peter Bukowski on one of the two shows, it's been a while. I wanted to get him on tonight because I kind of wanted to dump on Howie Roseman and the Eagles for acquiring Jahan Dotson today. But he had something going on. So I tried. We will soon, Rick, either maybe tomorrow on Bill's show, maybe tomorrow on this show, but he'll be on soon. Jared in Manitowoc says last night might be a season-changing game. Let the collapse begin August 21st. It's the day when the drunk dad from Hoosiers shows up. Yeah, see, that's kind of where I hop off the Brewers negativity train today. Last night was a debacle. Today was a pain in the ass. I don't really think it means anything past today. It doesn't have to mean anything past today. In fact, I think one of Pat Murphy's best qualities, and I think one of his best features as a manager, is that his teams bounce back from mistakes pretty quick. They still haven't lost. Have they lost 3 games in a row this year? I think the stat is they haven't lost more than 3 games in a row this year, right? I think. In any event, we've watched the Brewers all year, like even in a micro sense, like in a game. And those 2 Dodger games last week are great examples. Like Joey Ortiz can jack up his base running, get called out, and they bounce back from it, right? The other night, the bullpen gives up 2 runs. Mears gives up that home run. That was last night. And they come back and they score 2 more runs. Joey Ortiz ropes one into the gap. Like, this is a resilient bunch. Pat Murphy likes to use the term undaunted. It's a little corny. A little bit. So I try to use other words too. They do bounce back from mistakes. And it's a good thing because they make a lot of mistakes. Now they are younger than I think we give them credit for because Frelick was up a lot last year. We've been familiar with Mitchell for a couple of seasons. A player like Churio, he's so good. We don't remember the fact that he's 20, although Churio's not the one making a lot of these mistakes. Churio's been unbelievable. He had 4 hits last night. He had another hit in the first inning today. Contreras has actually been great and hitting for power and producing again. It's Dumb and Dumber in center and right. Garrett Mitchell. Look, Blake Perkins was activated today. I just rather would have had him in the lineup. He probably wouldn't have him hitting third. I would hit Gary Sanchez third and then put Blake Perkins down in the 6th or 7th or the 8 hole. Put Sal Frelick at 9. Always at 9. Always, always, always at 9. Never higher than 9. Well, lefty with Frelick, and it doesn't matter. Frelick's not good enough of a hitter for it to matter. Respectfully, of course. Thank you for the text, everybody. Sorry I was a little behind. 608-321-1670. We were talking a little Packers before we took that last break. Just a couple takeaways from camp today. It looked like an eventful joint practice with the Ravens. I love John Harbaugh's comments after the practice. That made me feel really good. He's like, yeah, both of these teams came in with the right mindset today, intent on getting some good work in. Got some good practices in. Anders Carlson and Greg Joseph both having a pretty okay day. In the 2-minute at the very end of practice, and I think I bookmarked the tweet. Here it is. This is Matt Schneidman from 1 o'clock this afternoon. So they do 6-minute drills, or not 6-minute, 2-minute drills. And the way that they formatted at the end of practice today is they did 6 of them. The Packers run offense 3 times, and then on defense 3 times, or the Ravens on offense. You get it, right? So the Packers' 3 possessions on offense ended like this. When you do 2-minute, you're down by 3. You have the ball. Their 3 offensive possessions went like this. Carlson hits a 35-yarder to tie the game. Joseph then in the second possession hit a 51-yarder to tie the game. And then in the third and final, Anders Carlson hit a 51-yarder to tie. Not bad. Offense maneuvered down into scoring range, scoring distance, field goal range, and the kicker put it through, whether it was Carlson or Joseph. On the 3 Packers defensive possessions, they got to stop and forced a Tucker field goal attempt from 62 yards, which you consider a win as a defense, right? Even if he makes that, it's like you got to stop on 3rd down and you force them to take a 62-yard field goal. The second defensive possession, Evan Williams got an interception, a player that we've talked a lot about the last couple of weeks. And then on the 3rd one, the Packers defense forced a turnover on downs. So in the competitive periods where you can actually kind of keep score, the Packers did pretty well. The things that you should actually take away from what I just shared with you are the kickers made their field goals. Evan Williams got an interception. That's probably what matters. That's probably what matters out of those competitive periods, those 2-minute periods, is the kickers were doing their job. And Evan Williams, who's a rookie, going to be playing alongside Javon Bullard and Xavier McKinney, who Xavier McKinney was everywhere today, I read. He's down around the line of scrimmage. He's in the backfield. He's playing free safety. He was everywhere. He was playing the run. He was playing the pass. So if he can be kind of the like the chess piece for Jeff Hafley, everyone else on that back end can kind of fill in around him, whether it's Bullard or Oladapo or Williams or Nixon if he's at slot corner. And I think that's where he's going to spend most of his time. Probably not at free safety. One of the rookies will probably fill in at free safety. If Xavier McKinney can be the chess piece, everything else, all those other pieces can kind of fill in around him, right? And Evan Williams is one of those other pieces. He's been really impressive at camp. Just seems like a pro's pro right away. A guy that you can insert and trust to be in the right place and make plays when he's in the right place at the right time. So that was nice to see today. I got a lot of positives coming out from camp, and we'll talk more about that on Bill's show tomorrow. We'll hear a little bit more from Matt LaFleur. Not necessarily going to inundate you. The show's a little bit shorter tonight. We were talking about Brewers, not necessarily going to hit you over the head with Matt LaFleur cuts. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that tomorrow and hear what really matters. And I haven't even seen, by the way, if Mike sent over those cuts for Matt LaFleur earlier today. And I haven't seen him yet. So again, maybe we'll get to that tomorrow. If there's anything of note we should actually talk about. Sometimes in press conferences there isn't. But it seemed like both Harbaugh and Matt LaFleur were really pleased today. And that defensive line group, again, that's really the unit that I've had my eye on from the beginning of camp, because this unit should be stronger. This unit should be better than they've been in the past. This should be the year where it kind of pops on the defensive line, and not just on the interior and not just on the edge, but overall. And what's kind of exciting about Jeff Hafley and what I'm interested to see with Jeff Hafley is, he might move Rashawn Gary inside, or, Lucas Van Ness inside, or move some of the, maybe Kenny Clark plays a little end. I think it's going to be a little bit of a crapshoot, and I'm excited to see. I think we'll get some different looks, some fun looks. And I think that might lead to, certain successes or certain moments for players where maybe in the past with Joe Barry or other defensive coordinators, you just line it up and go get the quarterback, which that can work too. I just don't know if they've had the personnel. Maybe they have the personnel to play this year that way. I also think that probably just going to play a little bit more creatively under Jeff Hafley, and that's exciting to think about. We'll see how it goes. I'm not saying that he's going to be the best defensive coordinator in football. I don't know. I'm excited to see what it looks like, though. 3 minutes. We'll come back. If you have any thoughts you want to get in, text him to me, call me, tweet me at Wisco Grant. Your final thoughts and my closing thoughts on the Packers as well when we wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Last segment, last couple of minutes. You want to get your thoughts in. This is the sports show. My name is Grant Bills. Brewers lose today. They lost last night. If they would have won last night and lost the way that they did today, no problem. No issue. And vice versa. If they would have won last night, lost today, no problem. I think I said that already. If they would have lost last night, won today, no problem. If they win 2 or 3 in this series, I wouldn't have had an issue. But the way they blew it last night and kind of stepped all over themselves, and then to do what they did today, which is mostly a whole lot of nothing, I guess is maybe the best way to describe it. Like, that annoys me a little bit. A couple of the big Packers storylines. Talked about the D-line. Talked about Eric Stokes. The practice that they had today. The kickers. The competitive period's going pretty well for the Packers. Put whatever value you want in that. I think it's owed at least a little bit of value. It's not necessarily the most important thing in the world, but I don't think we should ignore it. How the kickers did and how the defense did, especially rookie like Evan Williams. Ignore how they did in competitive periods. I don't think that makes sense. One other thing that I'm just keeping my eye on is A.J. Dillon and his health. Last year, the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues for the Packers on offense, was when Aaron Jones got hurt, they basically didn't have a running game, which then turned into an issue for Jordan Love because he didn't have a running game to support the passing game that he was trying to create from the ground up with these young wide receivers. I have a couple of comments from A.J. Dillon. I think it's probably smart if we listen to him from earlier this week. This is number one about his stinger. Asked if it's getting better or worse, or if it's similar to what happened to him last year.
They're a lot different. Some are a lot common. I think a lot of guys reference getting a stinger. At some point, I've had stingers in the past before the incident last year. As you know, certain things happen. Some are more severe than others. You know, you kind of look at it differently. But like I said, we're going to get opinions back, see all the information before we make any statements that are untrue.
That's the other thing about this injury. If Ballanfleur says, oh, you got a stinger, shouldn't be out too long. I don't think I worry that much about it. But Matt LaFleur and A.J. Dillon have both said, well, it's a stinger. We're waiting on tests. We're waiting on opinions. And maybe it's my experience with the Brewers that's led me to kind of raise an eyebrow at talk like that. Another comment from A.J. Dillon, asked if he's worried about it. Like, okay, so you're waiting on tests. This is something that you've gone through before, but is this reason for worry now in training camp? We're getting closer to the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature, but there is nothing you can do about it. You know, it is football. And above everything, we want to be safe and smart. You only get one body. So, you know, thinking about how we can, you know, be out there and be as protected, but also go out there and play, you know, carefree and, you know, go play football the way I want to play football.
Are you worried? I don't know what that question's supposed to accomplish with respect to whoever asked it. It's like, well, what do you want him to say? 608-321-1670. Let's sneak a call in here as we start to wrap up the show. Wisco Sports Show. Hello, who's this?
Grant, are you worried?
About A.J. Dillon's health?
I think, you know, when I came out after the draft, and I was all hot and bothered and fired up about the Marshawn Lloyd pick, it was kind of for this reason, right? Like, number one, didn't jump off the tape. You saw his highlight tape. We got about 6 minutes, and there was 0 touchdowns. He's getting caught from behind by everybody. You get into these first couple of weeks of training camp, and he doesn't look polished despite being the oldest running back in the draft and also most experienced. So this is a position that worries me because, like you said, last year without AJ or Aaron Jones, the offense really didn't look great. Really didn't look great. And I think Matt LaFleur wants to run that. Kyle Shanahan, we want to emulate the Niners. And they've got running backs falling off the trees over there. So running back is a position that I'm concerned about, but everywhere else is pretty good. So I'm curious, are you concerned?
I'm concerned, but it really doesn't have anything to do with personnel. Like, I think Marshawn Lloyd has looked imperfect in camp because he's been in and out with injuries. I don't know that it's some commentary on him as a player. You just didn't like him as a draft pick. I was kind of, whatever. I don't know that I had a real strong opinion on it. I'm not really that concerned with the player of Marshawn Lloyd or the player of A.J. Dillon. They just need more than one running back healthy. And if it's just Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, it's going to kind of feel like we're back to square one where we were last year. Now, Jacobs is 4 years younger than Jones, so I feel better about his durability, but still, there's not a lot of put it this way. I should feel better about the running back room considering what they invested in that running back room this offseason, right? I think that's the best way that I can put it.
And I think for me, I'm concerned about the way they invested their money. We listen to Big Ron and the investing advice, and oftentimes it's the way that you invest it. And to me, we're still at the square where running back, if the running back number one goes down, this offense looks a hell of a lot different. That playbook looks a hell of a lot different. And I don't think you can say the same for a lot of the teams in the NFL. So I think if there's one thing, and don't get me wrong, I'm excited for this season. I think we had a great team. If there's one thing that I'm concerned about, it's running back going down, because that'll make Jordan Love's job a lot more difficult.
Are you stuffed up? You dealing with fall allergies? What's going on?
I just had a random, big time allergy attack this afternoon. I'm glad you got that. I'm just sitting here. I'm like, suddenly, it's the first time I've talked. I'm just sitting in my house by myself. The first time I've talked in like 2 hours. I'm like, man, what do I got going on here? So I'll go snort some sriracha sauce and we'll get it cleared up.
See, you're not the only one. I was talking to someone else earlier today, kind of out of nowhere this morning, kind of had the same thing happen. So that's why I asked. It's not like you sound bad. Your takes were great. I'm glad to chat with you and get you in before the end of the show. I want you to get well. So go do what you need to do. Okay, Vagabond John?
We'll do what we need to do, Grant. Later.
Do what you need to do. That's Vagabond John, caller in Madison on WOZN. Appreciate him. I should feel better about the running back room, considering what they did this offseason. Spent a bunch of money in free agency about Josh Jacobs. Okay, so that I feel good about. But they also spent a third-round pick. I'm like, I should feel a little bit better about the third-round pick that they spent, and I don't. They brought back A.J. Dillon just kind of as an insurance policy, and now it feels like that insurance policy needs an insurance policy of its own, which I don't like. And I'm still not really sure what they have on their roster and Emmanuel Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not sure. And I feel like I should have more certainty. I should have more confidence in this running back room, considering they brought back a free agent, they signed another, and they spent a third-round pick at that position this last offseason. You know what I mean? I feel like I should just feel better about it than I do. And maybe they get healthy, and this isn't a concern. Maybe this isn't an issue come week one, and we watch Josh Jacobs play one time, and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's why they brought in Josh Jacobs. But also, my concern isn't with Josh Jacobs. It's who is behind or who isn't behind Josh Jacobs. You know what I mean? That's more my concern. It's not Josh behind him, because that was the issue last year. Aaron Jones wasn't the issue last year. It was behind him. I feel better about the sturdiness and the durability of Jacobs than I would of Jones, but he's still just one guy. Who knows? Take one weird step, you get your ankle stepped on, and all of a sudden you got to miss 2 weeks. And who else do we have? We'll wrap up the week tomorrow. No Brewer game tonight. I need a break from this team, which is hilarious to say coming off a 6-game winning streak. I'll talk to you tomorrow for Never